Hello, my name's Fabian Baker. I'm the Managing Director of Kingsrose Mining. We trade on the ASX, and over the past 2 years, we've entirely overhauled the business. We sold our Wailingo gold mine in Indonesia, which leaves us sitting on approximately $36 million in cash while trading at a roughly 50 million market cap. So we're focused on creating value through discovery, which means we're building a premier portfolio of exploration projects in Scandinavia, which includes the high-grade Penikat Project, and more recent news that we've entered into an earn-in agreement on the Rana project in Norway, and been selected by BHP, the world's largest mining company, to partner on nickel exploration in the region.
Fabian, thank you for the introduction. Good to speak to you again. I last spoke to you in late June last year, so over 6 months have gone. Lots of changes in the portfolio. You know, they picked up the Norway project. You've got some geophysical results from the Porsanger project up in the north of Norway, but it's that that joint venture, or the Xplor tie-up with BHP that I'd like to start with, because when BHP announced it about 4 months ago, they said they were going to select 7 companies or 8 companies, or I'm not sure they actually gave a number, but in the end they selected 7. Can you just talk us through that process, how you decided to apply, and what they looked for in you?
Yes, sure. Well, we saw this concept announced, and we thought it looked really interesting. So we put forward a concept that was an earlier stage regional exploration concept in Scandinavia for nickel. And incredibly, they moved very quickly through a series of interview stages, from the technical to sort of business, understanding our business in depth. It resulted in an in-person interview in Houston before Christmas. And yes, early in this new year, we were pleased to be selected out of many hundreds of applicants as just part of 7, being the first cohort of the Xplor program. And
what was in the portfolio? Was Rana in the portfolio at that time, or was that just a kind of discussion? Was that it was on the cards but not completed?
That's right. It was something we were working on but not completed. But in fact, the Xplor program doesn't relate to Rana or our other named asset Penikat, or Porsanger. It's essentially a more regional district scale approach that we've been working on, 2 key mineral belts, one in Norway, one in Finland, where we believe there's fantastic potential for new discoveries of nickel deposits. So we've ring-fenced those areas, and that's what the focus of the Xplor program is.
So it didn't matter that they weren't looking at a particular asset. They were just looking for your focus and your ability to execute in a chosen region.
Exactly. You know, we've gone about this change in strategy from mining gold in Indonesia to this critical metals focus in Scandinavia. And as a part of that, we've done really extensive work to understand the different mineral belts in Scandinavia, understand how they form geologically, where we see the most potential. And that process, we demonstrated to them how we've worked through a systematic mineral systems approach, to get to this point of highlighting a couple of really, really interesting areas. And so they see that we're a long way down the knowledge curve on that. We've already got an established team in the area, and we're essentially the right group to execute on that strategy. So it's something that they'd like to be involved in.
And when you went to Houston for that in-person interview, who did you go with? Was it just you?
No. So the general concept is you have one person more from the commercial side. So despite being a geologist, I'm the MD, and then we brought our technical lead. So that's Andrew Tunningley, our head of exploration.
I've worked with Andrew. He's a great guy.
Absolutely.
And you've also I saw on your LinkedIn profile or on your Twitter feed, I saw some photographs that you've actually just been on a residential kind of work shop with the other Xplor candidates. That must have been quite an experience, having the other 7 teams. And I mean, talk me through what happened. How long was it? You know, what was the format?
Sure. So essentially, this is called boot camp, and it was the kickoff of the program. This is the first time it's ever been run. It's a really pioneering concept for a major. So the 7 companies arrived in Toronto. It was a full week where we were essentially introduced to BHP's A-team in various aspects of the business, and also to key consultants that they brought in on other areas. So we went through everything from understanding sort of business strategy, a mineral systems framework that is a proprietary system that BHP has been developing in terms of how they approach exploration, through to what was termed operational readiness, but it includes everything from your operational planning and sustainability considerations. So it was an intensive week. It was a great experience, a case of work hard, play hard, in getting to know the other cohort. But we learned a huge amount. But I think most importantly, it made it clear that this is more than just a financial transaction for BHP. In terms of the transaction, they've taken a very light touch. They've advanced us $500,000 US, and they have no equity in Kingsrose or any of our projects. They have other rights of first refusal and a period of exclusivity while we work on this for a few months. But essentially, this is about collaboration. It's about mutual learning and building the foundations for a much larger partnership that may result.
It's funny. I've just been. I do a series of kind of lectures for Crux Investor, and I've just written one on mineral systems, the mineral systems framework, and also on the relationship between junior and major exploration and how the different size units go about their exploration. And there are benefits for a junior company. You know, junior companies make more discoveries. They've got more operational flexibility. They've got less onerous, health and safety guidelines, which are often in a big company driven by a mine site mentality and then don't really work in the exploration environment. And yet the major has got the capacity, it's got the balance sheet to do large scale work, to do, you know, what you really want is the best of both worlds combining. And funnily enough, I wrote that chapter just before the kind of the Xplor kind of culmination. But I kind of see that synthesis now is actually taking the best of both bits.
Absolutely. So what has surprised everybody is how quickly BHP has moved in this Xplor program. It's very unlike a major mining company. And that's because, led by a lady, Sonia, who heads up the Xplor program, this is sort of almost an autonomous unit within BHP that's got a mandate to act more nimbly and find that balance between a junior and a major mentality. And there's no one right way of doing these things. But what was really refreshing to see was, for example, meeting BHP's Chief Development Officer, who explained, you know, they know they've got some great IP and expertise, but at the same time, there's real value in going outside of that, getting different ideas, different opinions, different ways of operating, and seeing how that can work with a major like BHP. So really, you know, a credit to them for coming up with this concept and making it happen.
I think you're going to see other companies, other majors following. You know, it's kind of like it's a exploration special forces kind of unit. Just kind of go out there. Here's a chunk of money, but actually, as you said, it's not so much money. It's not a big financial investment for them. It's more a conceptual leap, which is
absolutely. And look, we've got essentially unfettered access to any department within BHP that we feel can advance what we're doing. So essentially, it gives us these huge resources that we can lean on to fast track and accelerate what we're doing and do it to the best standard. But you're right. Other majors are certainly paying attention, and we've had quite a few questions around how does this work.
It must have felt like going back to university in a sense. It must have gone into that hothouse of kind of geological thinking as well. And I know there are other aspects to what you did at that boot camp, but on a pure geological level, it must have been really exciting hearing what the other 7 teams were thinking about, but also and the experts within BHP.
Absolutely. The real benefit of this week, as you know, one of the benefits was the chance to take that step back. We're so busy, focused on driving forwards our businesses and our exploration concepts, that it's actually really valuable to step back and think holistically, you know, what is our strategy here? And then the same from a technical point of view, understand the deposits that we're exploring for, right from source, through to preservation, and everything in between that's required to form an economic mineral deposit. And then, yes, to see other projects that the other cohort hold, understand how they view them. It's just a great opportunity to trade ideas and learn a lot.
Okay, so let's hear that strategy then. Having stepped back and looked at what you're doing in Scandinavia, what's the synthesized or the summarized strategy?
Well, you're putting me on the spot here, and we're refining it, but essentially we're seeing that Scandinavia has enormous geological potential, and we can play to our strengths, which is the knowledge that we've developed in the team in country, and also our significant cash position, to take on opportunities that have been overlooked or are considered at sometimes a bit early stage, and drive those forwards through to discovery. So we see a strategy of doubling down on the Scandinavian region with a focus primarily on nickel copper sulfides. We have Penikat, which is a fantastic PGE deposit, but it's very unusual, and there aren't, as we know, any more like that. So aside from Penikat, it's a focus on nickel copper sulfide exploration. And within Scandinavia, you've also got fantastic infrastructure benefits. So there's the opportunity to build more than just a single asset play, a regional concept that can tie in multiple assets that benefit each other, that can lean on common infrastructure to create something of a scale that a major mining company is looking for. And that was another part of the program that was really helpful to understand what are these companies looking for. And at the end of the day, as a junior exploration company, one of our key customers, if you like, are the major mining companies. So it's really insightful to get an understanding of what they're looking for. So we're looking at a basin play, as they call it.
Before we get on to what they're looking for, I mean, I will go there, but in terms of what you've just described as kind of Scandinavian nickel copper sulfide, an exploration plus Penikat, which is the kind of the anomaly. Effectively, that is a multi-deposit exploration. So it's almost like a project generator, but because you've got the cash, you can take them on yourselves. So you're not necessarily vending them out. You've got 3 at the moment, which have got, well, I mean, your Rana discovery, we can go into that, but it looks as if there are kind of a couple of prospects there. Similarly, your Porsanger has got a couple of prospects. So, and indeed Penikat. So you've got these kind of 3 project areas, and you're effectively saying you're going to build up a portfolio of exploration assets that you can do the classic, define an envelope of mineralization, and then de-risk it.
Exactly. We're certainly not going down the route of a prospect generator, which is typically doing the very early stage work and then, before really drilling, looking for a partner. No, we want to own our concepts and our discoveries. But realistically, exploration is a high-risk business. And I think it would be only rational to see that being a one-trick pony, a one-project company, unless it's particularly advanced and really demonstrating that high level of confidence, it makes sense to have a refined, carefully curated, but broader portfolio of assets. So that's what we're looking to do, and we've got the cash position to be able to do it. There's synergies by having them all in the same region. And we think that gives us the chance of, at least one of them being successful, but we hope multiple successes in the region. And I think to go on from that, this also plays into what does a modern exploration company need to look like to get social license, to get support from a government. We are going into this region for the long term, and that means we can make genuine commitments to our communities, to the government, and build up a common understanding of what is exploration. It is high risk. We have to test lots of ideas. If one fails, that's okay. We'll move on to the next one. And so that way we can build up a much more honest, genuine business that can build that support for the long term, and we think has a much greater chance of exploration success. You've
still got to manage the local expectations, though. When you go in to do exploration work, whether it's prospecting or trenching or drilling, that communication has to be with the local people. That it may not, we're going to be results driven. We're starting small. We'd love to be here for the long term, but it's that on a very local level, there's still that short term risk.
Absolutely, and it varies between different regions, levels of excitement and support from the government, or levels of concern, perhaps from the local communities. It's only natural to jump to the conclusion of, well, when's there going to be a mine here and what's that going to mean? So yes, we have to manage those expectations. But again, actually, by being honest about that we're working through multiple assets throughout Scandinavia. We're not quite sure where's going to be successful, but in the meantime, we're going to work correctly and closely with you. We think it's the right way to do this.
Honesty is often the best way. But let's go back to the BHP. You said that it's good to understand what the majors are looking for. They are ultimately the logical customer for the product of junior exploration. And you also mentioned the word basin play and a portfolio. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about those three elements?
Sure. A company like BHP and a host of the other majors, for an opportunity to move the needle financially, it really needs to be very, very significant. And there's quite few single ore deposits that would fit that bill globally. And particularly from a nickel point of view, nickel in a perhaps similar way to certain VMS plays and so on, there's only a handful globally that are really enormous, but you do get camps of them. And that's where we need to be pitching our work. Essentially, finding one is great. Then you develop that IP, that intellectual property on how to find more of those. But it means you also need to own more of that mineral belt, so that there is that potential to grow. That gives you multi-decade, multi-generation mine life, the scale that can justify developing downstream processing technologies locally, and so that you can be involved in a larger sort of part of the value chain, and ultimately develop a more resilient and profitable business. So for a major mining company, one discovery is great, but they're looking, well, what next, and how does that inform the next one? And that often drives them to exploring in really wacky sort of out the way ideas, because it at least they've got space around them to find a large district. So
were you saying that they will choose an area because there's less competition in it, but it's got camp scale potential?
Exactly. Yes, we see that commonly. But I think, from my point of view, my view anyway, and what I'm trying to introduce is that there is that potential. There are parts of Finland and Norway which are not that well staked and have huge potential. But at the same time, as the old saying goes, the best place to find a new mine is in the headframe of an old mine. There is that scope for a major company to roll up multiple opportunities into one. And so I think a balanced approach, at least, is what we're presenting, where you've got that empirical evidence of historical mining, but then also lots of scope to move into more regional exploration ideas. Really
fascinating. Now let's just, at the kind of execution level, what's the plan for 2023? Where's the money going? When we last spoke, I was very much under the impression that permits in Penikat were going to be a delay on the exploration activities there. I wonder how that's resolved, and what I'll repeat. What's the plan for 2023?
Sure. As it stands today, we have the key projects of Penikat in Finland. Now we've taken on Rana in Norway, which is the nickel asset that we've just announced. And then the Porsanger Project in northern Norway is actually a northern extension of one of the areas that we're looking to explore in collaboration with BHP. So we've got, working backwards, we've got a pot of money from BHP to do the early work on this regional concept. We've assigned a part of our team to be focused on that. And we're also bringing in lots of local expertise. We're looking at working with the Norwegian Geological Survey and some universities who are doing PhDs on understanding those mineral belts to bring all of that knowledge together and essentially build the highest quality understanding of where to go and explore in those regional areas. So that's not particularly expensive. Go ahead.
Sorry, would you have so that's on area that you don't hold yet? What happens on the new ground? Would you stake it with BHP if you do stake ground?
That's right. Some of the ground we hold, some of the areas are currently open. But what we would do is essentially the result is to identify key targets that we will stake. And those will be staked by Kingsrose entirely as Kingsrose. And actually, it's only by mutual agreement if any partnership continues with BHP and they might earn any interest in those. For the time being, Kingsrose has the right to go this alone. So we've got that concept. At Penikat, this is our exceptionally high grade and potentially very large platinum group elements project in Finland. We've got all the benefit of this historical data that we announced a JORC compliant exploration target on, which shows up to 7 million ounces potential of high grade PGEs. The challenge at the moment for us there is getting our drilling permits. We've been working hard on this as a team and with the local government, and we're very confident that this will be successful. I was in Finland 2 weeks ago, sitting down with the environmental authorities on this process. The message is you will get these, but there is a process, and that process does take some time because it involves surveys of certain species and plants, understanding what the potential impacts of drilling and operating in the area could be on those. And there were a couple of surveys that have been requested recently, such as certain mating displays of a bird, a capercaillie, and understanding the impacts of work on certain birds of prey, just in case it means we need to adjust where and when we work at certain times of year in the future. So those surveys are happening through this spring. We'll be making an update to our applications, and then that'll kick us into the processing of those applications, which itself is a roughly 6 to 12 months process. Oof. So, yeah, it is quite laborious, and we're doing all we can. We've actually had a very positive commitment from the mines department that they will advance ours in the shortest time frame possible, which is 4 months. However, the environmental departments, they have up to about 6 months to bring in a decision before it passes on to the mines department. So the
spring survey completed.
Yep.
Probably late May, early June. Then
late April, early May. Yep.
Okay, late April, early May. Then you write the report. Then you submit that probably sometime in May, June, and then it's months after that at some stage.
So exactly. So the report's almost written. It's inserting this last survey. It's a very extensive report. We've done a huge number of surveys over the last couple of years. That yes, will get submitted during May, and then the environmental department first signs off before it moves on to the mines department. Now, they've been in the loop on this work over the past year, and saw a first draft actually in August last year, and so they are at the point where they've given us. They've understood what we've done. They've essentially now told us, well, where would they like to see more detail, which we hope and believe that means the rest is of sufficient quality, and it's just filling in those gaps that they've asked for, which is all very achievable, but there is that time frame involved.
And let's say we're sitting down here in a year's time. You've got your permit. What does that give you? Is that freedom to drill continuously, or is it just for a certain number of drill pads and a certain number of holes in kind of phase one drilling? And would you have to go through the entire same process again for the next drill hole?
Well, what it does is it gives you the right to drill. It gives you all land access rights and everything you need to drill. We are permitting a huge number, almost 400 drill pads, and also from which we can drill multiple holes at different angles. So we believe that's enough drill holes or drill pad locations to drill the entire deposit to an indicated and in places better resource category. So there won't be any need to go back to this process for many years to come. And where there may be areas that we'd like to update our approvals, that process can be happening in parallel with our ongoing exploration. So once we get those through, we should be in a position where we can keep moving things forwards. The only key point to mention that I think I've explained before is that in Finland it's becoming in these areas more of a standard that drilling is restricted to the snow-covered months, which essentially is from early December through to late April, early May. So we're looking at being able to bring at least 2 or 3 rigs onto the project. We know where the ore body is, it outcrops. And because of the continuous nature of the deposit, we can drill quite wide space drilling to very quickly define a large deposit.
Good. You say that's standard practice. Is that... I was expecting to hear that you wouldn't drill in the shoulder seasons or the kind of the mating seasons, but is it now standard practice not to drill in the summer as well?
Well, this is within what's called a Natura 2000 area. So okay. About a fifth of the EU is covered in a Natura 2000 site, and it's not a national park. Development is permitted in these areas. It just requires this higher level of environmental stewardship. So no, outside of that, there is the potential to drill in the summer as well. But within Natura areas, such as Anglo-American are dealing with on their Sakatti deposit, the nickel copper discovery also in Finland, and for example, Mawson Gold have a gold deposit in Finland. They're constrained by these same constraints as we would be.
Okay,
but again,
gotcha.
just to reiterate, we have the benefit of knowing where the ore body is. So rather than having to go back and re-permit once we get more information from phase 1 drilling, we know where it is, and we can move it forwards quickly once we get these approvals. And
the budget requirements this year are relatively small, I should imagine, for that process. It's not a highly intensive activity phase or phase of activity.
That's right. It's a couple of $100,000 just to finish all the various surveys, writing the reports, and making those submissions. Once we get into exploration, obviously things will pick up, and we'll be looking to advance drilling and exploration very quickly. But we've made a plan where we can look out 2.5, 3 years and essentially drill over 2 seasons to get ourselves to a maiden resource and a scoping study, along with advancing our other assets before requiring additional capital.
I received loud and clear. No capital raise for a couple of years.
Exactly.
Then you mentioned that the work up in Porsanger is going to be funded by the regional work is funded by that $500,000 from BHP. Are you going to be drilling you put out a release in October saying that you'd picked up these big EM electromagnetic conductors. Are you going to be drilling that this year, or is that also a kind of a permitting question?
Well, yes, we intend to drill it. So we did a survey over 2 areas. One in particular, which is called the Karenhaugen target, returned a really strong electromagnetic anomaly and perfectly down dip of the mineralized intrusion that we see at surface. So it's just where we want to see it. It's very encouraging. Interestingly, a PhD student recently dated that intrusive as exactly the same age as Anglo-American's Sakatti deposit, and it's the same type of rock. Now, they're a few hundred kilometers apart, but it's recognized it's all part of the same mineral belt and intrusive events. So that's really encouraging. We're just finalizing the timing of that drilling, but we're expecting it to happen during this European summer. So our intention is that'll be happening in July, August.
And you've allocated a budget to that?
That's right. It's quite a simple one to test. If I'm honest, it only requires roughly 1,000 meters of drilling in 4 or 5 holes, and the budget for that will be in the region of $600,000.
Good. And that leaves Rana as your
That's right.
As your kind of new exploration play. What's the tell us a little bit about it and the plan.
Sure. So this is a new project for us that we announced in the last couple of weeks. It is on the northwest coast of Norway. It was a past producing nickel, copper, cobalt mine that operated from the late 80s to the early 2000s. And it's essentially a large ultramafic and layered intrusion. Well, so it's not a layered intrusion, but a fractionated composite intrusion of various mafic and ultramafic units, which hosted this past producing mine. But the same units we see extend over many kilometers with significant outcropping mineralization. And essentially, as we did our due diligence, we understood that the historical geological understanding of this project, we think, was wrong and misinterpreted. And importantly, exploration techniques for these types of massive sulfide systems has really come on since when it was explored and mined. And this particularly relies on a different exploration model, but also geophysics. So what we have here is an area where outcropping mineralization was drilled from surface and very quickly put into production. And this is something that we see throughout Scandinavia, very much a mining mindset over an exploration mindset, at least in the past. So interestingly, they got into production from surface, started with a small open pit and then went underground. I mean, it was only once they were underground and following the ore body with underground drilling that they actually intersected a really nice high-grade zone along the base of this intrusion. So whereas they were mining sort of 0.4 to 0.5% nickel in the upper portions, there's a nice zone of 1 to up to 5% nickel along this basal contact. So actually, as time went on, what started with perhaps a 3 or 4 years mine life ended up being 13 years and actually is still open. The nickel price really dived in the early 2000s and the mine came to a close. And that essentially gives us a huge amount of knowledge about the project, but left the whole rest of this mineral system unexplored. So we can follow about 8 kilometers of strike length of the same host rocks that host the past producing mine. And in various locations along that, we're finding outcropping high-grade massive sulfides and entirely undrilled. It's quite exceptional. One of these areas is called the Ranbogen target. It's in our latest press release, and we've put a cross-section up the hill there where there's 1.6 kilometers of massive sulfides in outcrop. Now, this is a series of outcrops, not one continuous massive sulfide body, but a series of outcrops over 1.6 kilometers with rock chip samples grading between 1 and 3% nickel, along with associated copper and cobalt. And there's been just a handful of drill holes in one small part of that. Essentially, there's well over a kilometer of this system entirely undrilled. Now, based on what we know that this deposit can form high tenor massive sulfides up to 5 or 6% nickel, we're seeing it over such an extensive area at surface. This is just such an exciting target to explore. And
the two companies, you consolidated it from two companies. Is that right?
Well, exactly. So the project was held by one company that itself was owned 90% by one entity and 10% by another. So essentially we've partnered with those two companies, whereas we will be spending the money to explore the project, they'll be diluting, and we've got a route to earn 75% ownership in the project by spending 15 million Australian dollars over 8 years. So we can get to 51% for a first $3 million commitment within 3 years. Now, in reality, our work program for this year will exceed 3 million in the first year. So we're really going to move this forward quickly.
And that last 25%, I couldn't see a kind of a buyout clause. Is that subject to ongoing conversation and negotiation, and perhaps a conversation some in the future?
That's right. At that point, it would be required for the other parties to contribute their share, their 25% share. We will be the manager, so we have full discretion over the exploration plans, what will be spent, how it will be explored, and so we can continue driving that forwards and make cash calls to them for their 25% share of the exploration costs. Now, if they don't contribute, we've got a first right to pick up that shortfall and earn an increased interest. So depending on what those parties choose to do with their portion, there's every chance that we could dilute them down further.
And is there a trigger? Do they get to 10% and it flips to a royalty or anything, or is it just a kind of a straight contribute or dilute?
Essentially, there are already there's a 3% in total royalty on the project, 1% royalties. So we weren't willing to allow any further ones. So essentially, if they dilute down to, I believe it's 2%, essentially their shareholding is bought out. That final 2% is bought out at a fair market price, and they're out of the project with no additional royalty. So
great. So let's in terms of the news flow.
Well, yeah, and I just sorry, Merlin, but I just wanted to also highlight this project is situated right near the town of Narvik in Norway, which is where all of Sweden's iron ore is shipped from the Kiruna mine. So it's already a port shipping out over 20 million tons per annum of iron ore. The mine site, the old mine site itself, is still designated as a mining zone in the municipal plan. So we've got fabulous infrastructure and all of these key points that can delay permitting already in place. So it's drill permitted today, and parts of it are already essentially permitted for mining, subject to reapproving a new mining plan. So we can move it forward really quickly, and that's what we're planning to do. So we'll be starting, although we have walk-up drill targets in a sense, given there's outcropping high grade at surface, we want to refine those through some good mapping and particularly geophysics. So that geophysics will be happening as the snow clears through April, May, and into June. We'll also be doing downhole borehole EM on the edges of the mine, because there are drill holes on the edges of the mine. One of them had 15 meters at over 2% copper, completely not followed up on and open for expansion. So we can do downhole EM around the edges of the mine and look for extensions of the high grade zones within the mine. And we can start drilling those while doing a project-wide geophysical program to develop those other targets, which we're seeing outcropping at surface, but we want to understand more of before we drill. So that'll be a large geophysical and exploration program leading into at least 5,000 meters of drilling, which we expect to commence in August. And so that drilling will continue into roughly November, providing continuous news flow, and we think every chance of a significant new discovery.
Fabian, thank you so much. That's really interesting. Quick question on, I've always got the impression that drill permits in Norway are also slow, as well as in Finland. What's it called, Randbergen, the one off to the east. Is that going to be able to be drilled this year? Are you able to kind of include it within the kind of relative permits or the same suite of permits that you've got for the mine area?
In fact, it's already drill permitted. That's one of the areas that the previous holders already permitted. So importantly, this project is in a different municipality or region of Norway. So whereas Porsanger is in the north in Finnmark, it's a slightly different permitting process up there, because you have to do a lot more work to include the Sami right holders, the indigenous right holders. Whereas in this part of Norway, that's less of a consideration. It's not a permitting consideration. And in fact, the previous owners managed to get drill permits approved within 2 weeks of applying for them. So really straightforward process in this part of Norway. We have enormous support from the local municipal government. In fact, they're already renovating some of the old mine buildings on our behalf for us to use as offices. They're absolutely behind what we're doing. And interestingly, they have already designated this project to be part of a Norwegian critical minerals fast-track process. So the Norwegian government recognizes the importance of developing a critical minerals extractive industry, and they are piloting a fast-track permitting process, and our project is included in that. So that gives us a very different picture, let's say, to Penikat and Porsanger, in that we've got really clear permitting permits in place and a quick route to getting future permits on the project.
Thank you. That's a really useful clarification. Porsanger, the permits for drilling the 1,000 meters in the summer, are you in the process of applying for those, and will you get those permits?
Yes, so that application is it's pending. We actually sat down and met with the Ministry for Industry, who are responsible for this, and they're processing that. We had very positive indications there, and so hopefully we can confirm that those are secured over the next month or so. And
you've done the Sami consultation. You've done the baseline surveys. Or sufficient environmental impact assessment.
Exactly. In fact, there's no environmental impact assessment required. However, we've gone ahead and done it anyway, just to operate really at the best practice. So we've done environmental surveys as well as archaeological surveys to demonstrate that our drilling access routes and where we want to work won't have a significant impact on those sensitive areas. We've been really involved in engaging with the local Sami and community. We've just formed a community working group. So representatives of different parts of the community are going to be meeting with us on a regular basis to understand what we're doing and come along with us on the ride and develop that mutual understanding between us and the community. And with the local indigenous reindeer herders, we're currently finalizing what's called a process agreement, which would be a first of its kind in the region. And this is one of the key things that we're trying to pioneer, is that good relationship that has been challenging in the past to get their consent to work there. So it's an ongoing conversation. There's a huge amount of mutual learning and trust to be built up over time. This isn't a sort of flick the switch and it's done. It's a continuous process of building that trust, and we think we're on the right track. We're doing all we can there, and in fact, it's a part of the BHP idea as well, where we can lean on that expertise from their other projects with indigenous communities, so that we can really operate in that way to the best standards.
Good. Fabian, thank you very much for your time. It's been a really interesting chance to catch up on the progress in the company over the last 6 months. The BHP endorsement and the way that they're approaching it is really interesting, and hopefully it'll be very fruitful in the long term. And it's good to see that you've got Rana on board, because that permitting ability to work on it does make such a difference, to give you the operational flexibility to get news flow out on a regular basis, irrespective of the geological potential, which seems to be there. So
absolutely.
Congratulations.
No, many thanks. And you're right, that endorsement from BHP was a really appreciated validation of what we're doing here. We're trying to build a real business for the long term. But great that we can get stuck into some exploration on Rana while we wait for the rest of the pipeline to come through.
Well, hopefully you'll come back and at some stage, perhaps when you've got the geophysics done or when the mapping's done, before you're about to drill in at Rana in Norway. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Be happy to.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks.